Hi guys, welcome back to the second half of lecture number 4. We left off in the last lecture with discussing how the Qin will emerge victorious from the very long and protracted and bloody era of the Warring States. And as the first emperor of China, Qin Huangdi will be very, very important for a number of different reasons. Now, when we think of the word reform today, like I've used here on the slide, we tend to think of something as done for the benefit of the people, right? Reform is a step forward to help out a population that maybe had been overlooked or help address a problem for the benefit of society in general. Now, definitely some of the changes that Qin Huangdi will institute, abolishing slavery, definitely a positive, no matter what era you're talking about. But what you need to understand about all these reforms that Qin Huangdi will enact during his rather brief rule, you need to understand the reason why he's enacting these reforms. He is not making these changes to help the people out. He is not making these changes to earn the gratitude or the devotion or love of people underneath his empire. He's not making these changes because in some cases they're simply the right thing to do, especially in the instance of abolishing slavery. None of these are being done for humanitarian reasons. Instead, all of these things are being implemented to strengthen his power. That is what this man was interested in doing. Just as he knew that he had to scrape his way to a position of power by killing countless individuals, he is worried that someone will turn around and do the same thing to him, snatch power out of his hands. So understand that all of these reforms that are enacted under Qin Huangdi, the first emperor of China, are being done purely for his benefit. Now, certainly in the case of abolishing slavery, that is, as I said, always a positive, but in the end, he's really doing it because slaves during this time period, their primary loyalty would be to their owner, the person that can decide to free them or keep them enslaved. So by removing the loyalty that any former slaves might have to their former owners, they are immediately going to become loyal to him. He is also enacting a standard law code so that all these new territories that are coming under his control, that he can streamline the legal system, that he can do away with privileges that perhaps certain groups might have been accustomed to enjoying in certain areas, and get everyone under the same umbrella, legally speaking. Instituting a standard system of weights and measures. This helps with facilitating trade from one end of his empire to another. For political leaders, they want to make sure that their population is able to make money so that they can skim a portion of those profits off the top in the form of tax revenues. Tax revenue to fund newer and deadlier armies, bigger armies, to keep these rulers in power. Standardizing the monetary system, there were a number of different types of coins that were minted, various forms of currency amongst these previously disorganized states. Again, he's streamlining the process. He's getting everyone on the same page and now under his leadership. And then finally, constructing roads throughout the empire. This is critical from the standpoint of roads help get you from point A to point B much faster than just over unbroken terrain. So this will speed up trade from various areas of his empire to other regions. And most importantly, this guy came to power through brutal military action. He is always aware that there's the possibility of a rebellion somewhere that will spring up. He needs to be able to get his troops to these areas to crush rebellions quickly before they escalate into something that might challenge his rule. We also credit the Qin Dynasty as the time when we begin to see some of the first big progress being made on what will become known as the Great Wall of China. It will be started in sections to begin with and will not be completed until hundreds and hundreds of years later under the Ming Dynasty. But this is when this process begins. One of Qin Huangdi's largest public works projects will be constructing this defensive barrier sort of to the northeast. the north and the northwest of his region of control to keep out many nomadic invaders, most notably groups like the Tatars and the Mongolians. Now, legalism is a philosophy that was very much in vogue under Qin Huangdi. He did not create this philosophy, but his rule is very closely associated with this particular political philosophy. Now, legalism, unlike Confucianism, which emphasizes man's essential goodness and ability to grow and become more than what he was through education and through, respectful behavior. Legalism, the opposite of Confucianism. Legalist thinkers, their starting point is viewing human beings as evil, as little more than animals. And because legalist thinkers perceive human beings as untrustworthy, as dangerous, lying individuals, then they will advocate treating human beings like wild animals, caging them to try and stop any sort of uprisings. So for legalists, they believe in very strict and swift punishments for all types of crimes. In this type of a system that Qin Huangdi favored, you cannot buy your way out of the justice system just because you might have a fancy name or you might come from a very wealthy family. That, according to him, would risk certain people's thinking that they were above the law or that they deserve special treatment, and that's not something that he wants to encourage. Legalists also believe in very strict censorship of all printed materials and censorship of thought and speech. It's no accident that under Qin Huangdi, thousands of Confucian scholars were buried alive. They were simply killed because he believed that these were people that had an education that might one day be used against him to mount a military rebellion. So legalist philosophy, very cruel and very, very strict in a number of different ways. The Qin Dynasty will quickly collapse after the death of Qin Huangdi, who inadvertently ended up offing himself. He had been fascinated with the concept of immortality and living forever, and had come up with a number of different concoctions, herbal concoctions, to try and take to prolong his life. One of those will actually end up ending his life prematurely. When he dies, there will be a brief period of unrest following a peasant rebellion, and when all the dust settles, we're going to see the rise of yet another dynasty, the Han Dynasty, which will, to many people's relief, will start relaxing some of the rules, relaxing some of the harsh censorship and politically motivated killings of recent years. The Han Dynasty will begin to allow people to settle into a quiet rhythm again. It will allow people to scholars and scientists to begin doing their work once more without fear of reprisal. The result will be historians can once more chronicle the lives of great Chinese rulers. Scientists will begin developing paper from wood pulp. You can see the paper production process here on the slide. Acupuncture will be developed as an alternative treatment for chronic illnesses. Han scientists will begin to develop a magnetic compass to help sailors navigate the oceans under even cloud cover when they cannot normally see the stars. Fertilizer, improvements in agriculture such as the development of a better horse harness will help to continue to feed this ever-growing population. The Chinese today still, in fact, take great pride in the achievements that took place under Han rule, calling themselves the people of Han. The imperial government under the Han Dynasty will also become much more complex and professionalized. We're going to see a group of individuals that will become known as mandarins, and these will be professionally trained individuals who will begin to work for the bureaucracy of the Han Dynasty, the multiple layers of government that are making this machine of state go forward need to be staffed by professional individuals. And so mandarins will develop as a class of scholar officials who will join state service And during this period, in order to become a member of the Han imperial government, they will also begin to establish proficiency exams. Now, if you want to become a postmaster or a tax collector or what have you, you will now have to pass an examination on the front end to show that you actually do have the requisite skill set to be a success and to be an asset to this government. Under the Han Dynasty, Confucianism will once more come back into vogue as the predominant state philosophy. Wu Di will become among the most famous Han leaders during this era, known for really trying to cement Confucianism and its ideas concerning the importance of education and respect for others. He's going to really work towards creating that as a state philosophy, establishing, for instance, an imperial university just for the study of Confucian classics. We also remember Wu Di for the dramatic territorial expansion that will take place under his military leadership. Han troops will invade today what is now Vietnam. They will conquer Manchuria and the northern part of the Korean Peninsula. And they will manage to secure their northern frontier by, at least in part, resettling several millions of Chinese peoples in some of these newly conquered regions to try and protect them from these regions reverting back to their previous leadership. Another development of note under the Han Dynasty is the establishment of what will become known as the Silk Road. Some 4,000 miles long, this will become the major trade route from East Asia to the Middle East and southern Europe and the Mediterranean. This will become a critical link in establishing trade between various regions of the ancient world. And it will get its name, the Silk Road, because from the standpoint of the Chinese, silk will remain their most valuable export item, in addition to porcelain and other metalworking items. Silk will be sort of the bread and butter of the Chinese export economy during this period. Now for the Han, their last emperor abdicated in AD 220 amid rampant internal fighting for control. We're going to have another long and protracted era of the warring states where it's just going to be kind of a free-for-all, very deadly period. And when the dust will finally settle after centuries worth of internal rebellion and fighting, the Tang Dynasty will rise to power during the 7th century. And we will see another era of relative peace and stability, which will allow a flowering of creativity in many fields. Buddhism, the philosophy that will originate in the Indian subcontinent, will begin to trickle into East Asia during this period through the Silk Road. We will begin to see block printing invented, making the written word available more quickly, more cheaply to a number of different peoples that could not have afforded it otherwise. There will be a number of canals and major construction projects built in urban areas. The Tang Dynasty saw a population perhaps of as many as 50 million people. Of course, as with every Chinese dynasty, there's a period of internal chaos and sort of a period of long and slow deterioration. And we'll see that dynastic cycle repeating itself once more with the ultimate rise of the Song Dynasty. Under Song leadership, we will see more advances in a number of different areas, the arts, the sciences. The Song will develop gunpowder as a weapon in siege warfare during this time period, for instance. The Chinese were using magnetic compasses and developing elaborate charts to aid those on the open oceans in their navigations. Advances were made in medicine. Paper currency came into use under the Song Dynasty. Several populations with over 1 million residents in particular cities during this period. There's nowhere in the rest of the world that has this type of a population density during this time period. The use of the abacus, an early form of calculator to help mathematicians and accountants better keep records. With regard to agriculture, they're continuing to make advances to feed their population and also to grow newer crops like cotton and learning how to weave lightweight cotton fabrics and to incorporate those into their society. What will bring an end to the Song Dynasty will be the Mongol invasions of the 14th century, and we'll circle back to the Mongols later in class.